And today we will be reading some bad date stories. I found this Reddit site. I don't know Reddit that good, but it's basically called Dating Hell. And it is so popular with just bad dating stories from people. They're true, so let's get right into it. Pro Anna fetishist locks me in his apartment against my will. This will be a long one. And before I start, I want to warn you that A. English is not my first language. B. I will be mentioning a few triggering topics, so if you are sensitive, this might not be for you. A few years ago, when I was around 17, I decided to download Tinder to see what it's like. Now that I am older, I know that getting it was a huge mistake, especially that due to my fake age on Facebook, I was matching with adults. But back then I haven't really thought about it. I wasn't into dating, and I was very open about it. Up to this point, I met about 2, maybe 3 people, spent some time talking, drinking coffee, everything seemed cool, until this happened. Before we start, I need to say that at this time, I was at my worst point of evolving eating disorders. I wasn't extremely skinny, but I was thin enough that by looking at me or my photos, you could say something is going on. This will be relevant later. So I matched with this guy, let's call him Blake. Blake looked like a cool hipster on his photos, and when we started talking, he seemed to be outgoing, a nice guy. After a pleasant conversation, he asked me for my Facebook, which I gave to him. A week or so passed, and he asked me to meet him for dinner. Now he suggested a restaurant that is on the other side of my city. I'm usually not eager to travel this far for dinner, but I was supposed to go sleep with my friends. Let's call her Jade. I was supposed to sleep at Jade's house, which is coincidentally a few streets away from the spot where Blake wanted to meet me. So, after making sure we're meeting in a public place and it will not take too long, I agreed. I arrived by the subway and the guy was not there. He messages me that he is on his way, but to make it faster, he suggests that I should walk in his direction. Okay, not a big deal. After a minute or 2, I finally see him. First weird thing that I noticed was the fact that he arrived on a bike, but I brushed it off thinking he will get off of it once he reaches me. Wrong. He stops right in front of me. I ask him where the restaurant is and he points me the direction telling me to go. I start walking and he just rides slowly behind me. I try to keep a small talk with him and it goes okay. Now, I have no idea where I should actually be going and for how long. I stopped on the intersection waiting for his directions when I hear him say, "Straight ahead! Are you always acting like a dumb bitch?" My heart stopped. For a second I thought it was a bad joke, so I smiled and continued walking. But after he said that, it just got worse. My slutty ex was acting like this as well. Yeah, all females are helpless, having no life without a man to show you how to live. I kind of feel bad for all of you. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I couldn't break the be nice rule I was taught all my life. I promised myself that it's okay, that I will just eat what I was supposed to, and then I'll never see him again. While I'm walking and he is riding his bike onto my heels, heavy rain starts. By the time we reach the restaurant, everything I have, even things I kept in my backpack, are wet. As if it wasn't bad enough, the restaurant we were meant to go was actually a shed-sized Chinese snack bar located in the middle of one of the worst neighborhoods I had seen, with only shady people standing around and smoking cigarettes. At this time, I shake my phone out and message one of my friends the address and the name of the person I'm with, thinking that I will not get out alive from this situation. We ordered food, we sat down at the table. I made a mistake of taking off my jacket because it was so wet, I was warmer without it on. Blake literally stares at my chest, and as his order is ready, he winks at me. You might have anorexia, but at least you kept the tits. I smile when he reaches for the phone to spend the rest of our meal scrolling through his Tinder. I put on my wet and cold jacket on, not wanting to hear anything about my chest ever again. After he finished eating, he announces that we're going to his apartment so I can dry my hair. I know this is a bad idea. I can tell already how this is going to end badly, but again, I was just frozen in fear. I couldn't say no, because even though I wanted to run, I had this thought in my head telling me that I couldn't be nasty to anyone, that I can't make him upset. So, I agree. But while he asks the waiter to put our leftovers into takeout bags, I take my phone out once again and message Jade that I am in danger. I beg her to help me and to message me and call as much as she can until I tell her that I am safe. While we start walking towards his flat, he stops at the store where he buys what I assumed was cigarettes and condoms. He asked me to stay outside to guard his bicycle, and while I was doing so, I was able to pick up one of Jade's calls and tell her about the situation I was in, and give her the address of the street I was on. Later, when he finally paid, he put his arm around me and dragged me to his place. My friend is already waiting for me, I say. I will have to be quick, and since we're here, I want to ask you to please not to touch me. I am not too comfortable with that. He laughs, but later nods his head as if he understood. For a moment I felt relieved, having a slight hope that up to this point, I just wasn't giving enough signs. We step into his apartment, and right before I am able to say anything, he locks the door behind me. I was so stressed out, I started to look for alternative routes to run away. Unluckily, it was the 12th floor, and his windows are too small for any human to fit. He brings the blow dryer and insists to dry my hair. While doing so, he starts playing with it and makes a bunch of comments about how small and helpless I look. By this time, Jade called me a couple of times. I kept picking up and telling her that I'm on a date and I will be there soon, which didn't raise any suspicion of Blake. Actually, I made him think that my friend is a psycho bitch, he said it to himself, because she calls me too much. When my hair was fairly dry, I get up and tell him that I need to go, but he grabs my wrist and shoves me towards the couch. He takes my phone away, puts it on the table next to us, and then turns on the TV so he can watch a football game. He tried to make me talk to him about it while he started to touch my breast, but I was just sitting there, unable to move. Just when he put his hand on my chest and started leaning even more towards me, I said the first thing that came to my mind. Did you know that horses can die of herpes? It was the first time I was able to catch him off guard. He just raised his head and stared at me blankly before finally telling me that I am fucking weird. At this moment, I knew that this might be my way out. My weird obsession with parasites and weird diseases was finally usable. I started talking about the most bizarre, disgusting things I could think of. It actually turned him off so much that he gave up and finally slid down on the couch next to me. At this point, he still didn't want to let me go, until the sound of my phone ringing, Jade's calls, pissed him off so much. He called Jade a bunch of names and told me to shut her up. I grabbed my stuff and ran as fast as I could, until me and Jade finally found each other a few streets away. I started crying out of happiness that I actually got out of there alive. Jade called me dumb and blamed me for the whole situation, but eventually calmed down and paid for pizza for both of us. When I was already in Jade's house, Blake started messaging me on Facebook. He said that we should meet again tomorrow, which I ignored. When I haven't responded immediately, he called me a slut and tried to shame me for responding to my friend so quickly, but now leaving him on red. Another message that he sent me has been stuck in my head for years. All I ask of you is to respect me. If you're not going to do that, we'll have to say goodbye, and that's not what we both want. After another day of spamming me, not getting a proper response, he told me to fuck up and he blocked me. A twist to the story came 4 years later. In 2019, I got enough confidence to share screenshots of his messages and my story on a Facebook nice guy awareness kind of group. One girl from this group messaged me asking if Blake's real name was this and this. She was correct. It turns out that she was the bitchy ex that he complained about. She told me that he actually lied about his age when he met me. He was at least 26, not 21 or 22. That she started dating him when she was 15, and he forced her to run away from her family and take drugs. She at the time of meeting him also was underweight, which he kept praising her for, often forcing her to starve because he liked how bony she looked. Later, when we both started to search for other victims of Blake, we found another girl who met him when she was underage, who was also forced to take drugs and whose $1,000 were stolen by him. It actually made me realize how lucky it was to get away from him before he harmed me. At this moment, we're still thinking about filing a police report against him, even though I'm not sure if it will be possible. P.S. I could provide screenshots as proof, but they are not in English and I would have to translate them. Dating app date gone awkward. This happened a few years ago, but it's still the most baffling experience I've ever had. I used a dating app for a bit and matched with this guy. I don't actually remember his name, let's just call him Tim, who seems like a decent guy, cute face, like 6 foot, that floppy hair I used to like, architect. First time we matched, we messaged back and forth for a day. Nothing interesting, just small talk. And eventually, he tells me he figures he's not interested. Fine by me. 2 months later, Tim messages me again. He seems to have forgotten any and all past conversations. I didn't change anything about my profile or my pictures, so kinda weird. I'm more amused than anything by this and eventually agreed to a date. We realize he works in an office down the street from my then apartment, so I tell him I'll pick him up after work and we can go to the ice cream place at the mall. Tim agrees. So I idle in front of the place, feeling cute and happy to go out, and also ice cream, yum. And into my car hops this guy who vaguely resembles the profile picture. Okay, maybe it's a dated pic. Who am I to judge? I drive us to the mall and we get out and he is definitely not 6 foot. I mean, I'm a tall lady at 5'10". This dude is a good head shorter than me. That in itself isn't a deal breaker, but why lie about it? We get to the place, we find a table outside in the sun. I'm excited for ice cream and order my favorite. They make specialty bowls there, and if you ever come across a tiramisu ice cream bowl, yum. Tim wants 2 scoops of strawberry. While we wait, I ask him about a few things he had on his dating profile, trying to make small talk, and he just won't answer me. He'll hum, shrug, give 1-syllable answers at most. Guys, I wasn't happy. I try finding a topic he'll like, maybe. No chance. The ice cream arrives, he takes a look at my bowl and goes, that's a pretty big one. Yeah, it's also pretty delicious, Tim. Try living a little. Jeez. He keeps stonewalling me. It's incredibly awkward. I don't know if I wasn't his type, if he remembered our last match suddenly and was embarrassed, or what the problem was. But Tim keeps refusing a conversation. Eventually, he wants to know whether I usually talk this much. Tim, I'm literally carrying the entire conversation here. I ask him why he's not engaging, and he says he has nothing he wants to talk about. I pay for my own bowl and drive us back to his office to drop him off, and suddenly, he becomes really animated, tells me about the funny name of his bistro across from the office, and he and his coworkers are in tears about it every time they look out the window. It wasn't that funny. When we stop, not only does he tell me next time he'll take me to the funny name place, he also leans in for a kiss. We did not kiss. We also never spoke again. Hope you found someone to bore to death, Tim. I'm disabled. He said he was okay dating me because he liked the movie A Walk to Remember. Last January, I went on a date with a man we will call Landon, who I met through OLD. We had some light phone conversation and he seemed alright, so we decided to meet up for dinner. Landon spent the first 20 minutes of our day explaining to me how he was the smartest self-taught programmer to ever exist, etc., but was having a lot of trouble getting Google or Facebook to hire him. So, he was a private consultant for now, which I took to mean as he was unemployed. He also was quite rude to waitstaff, yelling at our waiter for no reason, sending everything back, making a scene. It was hard to judge him as anything less than a narcissist based on the delusions of grandeur and obvious entitlement. It always makes it easy when someone shows you who they are right away. Anyway, narcissists are a hard bunch to ditch because they really hate when you tap out first. So I decided to knock myself off the pedestal he was putting me on right away, so he'd leave and hopefully I'd never hear from him again. I said I felt it important to disclose that I do have 2 fairly significant and rare autoimmune diseases, 1 case per every million people kind of rare, and that it was important he understood that, though I look healthy and young, I'm still chronically ill and could potentially succumb to my illness. This is all true, Plus, I also have lupus and Sjogren's, but that's kinda whatever compared to the relapsing polychondritis and dermatomyositis. He sits in silence for like 5 really long minutes and says, "You know what? That's fine. I loved the movie A Walk to Remember. I could do this." I was stunned. I had not considered that the outside appearance of being a selfless partner or a grieving widower might be attractive to someone like this. He basically wanted to enlist us in some real-life adaptation of this god-awful movie after 30 minutes of knowing me. I laughed because I was so surprised, but then said that I needed to go home, because that was highly inappropriate and I was uninterested in seeing him again. I didn't hear from him for about a week and assumed the nail was in the coffin. But then Landon came back from the dead, alas. He sent me what probably equated to a 2-page message about how I was wrong for him because of my poor communication style, and how I was going to die alone because I didn't want to be with him, and what a terrible person I was, etc. He sent it through the dating app we were still connected on because I blocked his number. I did not respond, then I blocked him on the dating app. Several weeks passed, and then he started hitting me up with new numbers every month or two, which he still does to this day, nearly a year later, to try and entrap me into talking to him. Things he asked me, "Are you mad at me? I just got a cat, can you give me advice? I feel like we didn't give things a proper go, would you be open to trying again? I'm really scared about Corona, can we please just talk?" It's the creepiest thing, Landon never seems to go away. I block a number, he makes a new one. This was by far my creepiest and most disturbing old dating experience. Thankfully, he hasn't physically stalked me yet, but with his determination, who knows? Never trust people who say they're mentally stable. The story is so long, I'm sorry. It was an insane ride. I met this chick on Tinder, and I thought she seemed really awesome and fun. Our first date was a blast, and we even made out, which I typically don't like to do so soon. I really liked her. We talked together, and I made it clear I was looking for someone who was mentally stable, as all of my past relationships failed because the other person sadly wasn't able to take care of themselves. She totally agreed and disclosed she was on medication and in therapy, which I said was cool because, self-help. She never said what condition she had though, and I didn't feel the need to pry. She also mentioned she was hit by a car recently and is recovering from that. Fast forward 3 weeks and I get really, really sick. I hadn't been this sick since I was a kid. Doctor tells me I got upper respiratory virus and oral herpes. I confront her and she claims she doesn't have it and gets tested again to make sure. I tell her she could have had it as a kid and now it's asymptomatic. I don't seem to believe it's possible she could forget having a cold sore as a kid. I later realized that weird scab she had under her nose when we made out was likely oral herpes. I had never seen it before, so I didn't know what it looked like. Despite all of this, I forgive her and we keep dating. I end up finding out that she was adopted. Her dad died when she was young, and she has a terrible relationship with her, also adopted sister. I also come to realize she is a crybaby, and every time something is even slightly wrong, she cries. It really bothers me, but she says it's normal, so I try to get used to it. 2 months into the relationship, I have to break it off. She doesn't seem to have any significant interests. I discover she has no friends other than an ex-girlfriend who cheated on her several times and had a pregnancy scare that she was ready to give up her life for. Lastly, all she does is tell me I'm attractive and want to make out with her and do stuff to her that I was definitely not comfortable doing. She instigated all of it, and I only went along because I liked her. However, I realized I wasn't sexually attracted to her at all. Again, despite all of this, I decided to stay friends with her, as she literally has none, and I felt like she meant well. By this time, she still hasn't gotten any help for her injuries from being hit by a car, and actively complains about them. This whole time, I've been telling her to switch lawyers since they weren't getting her any help. She hasn't. 3rd month, she finally switches lawyers and gets help immediately. Of course, she doesn't say thanks to me or anything. Stops talking to me about her ex-girlfriend because I don't like her. I don't like cheaters. But I never tell her to stop being friends with her. I tell her to consult with her therapist over these things. She also starts having problems with things I say. Even if I mean it a different way, she takes it the bad way. She takes everything personal, seems to have problems with me being white and privileged, even though I was born into it and I'm actively trying to educate myself. Also, constantly is talking about her feelings, yet says she hates talking about them and says she feels forced by me. She starts to not tell me a lot of things, even though she wasn't even fully honest with me at this point. During this time, she goes on a spree, sleeping with a bunch of different people. She later claims because she wanted to see if she was into it, but it was probably because she was in love with me and I broke up with her. After each one-night stand, she cries to me about how she felt uncomfortable and how the other person didn't understand consent. No means stop. She still continues doing it. Month 5. By this time, I am no longer enjoying our friendship. I asked her what her therapist said about her sleeping spree. She says she didn't tell them. She isn't telling her therapist everything. She confesses to me that she has bipolar disorder. It would have been helpful to know sooner, as I treated her as someone who wouldn't control their emotions, not knowing she literally couldn't due to a mental illness. She tells me she felt highly uncomfortable when dating, especially when engaging in makeout sessions, etc., and making it sound like I pressured her into it. I really felt hurt by this, as she said communication was important, but didn't bring this up until months later. Additionally, I didn't want to engage in any activities with her, but she literally told me to do it. Example, kiss me! Our conversations greatly decrease after this because I'm no longer interested. However, true to my heart, I tell her I'll always be there for her even if our friendship ends. I have a breakdown, the first one since I've met her. Big mistake, I go to her. She freaks out and takes everything I say personally, even though I was talking about how bad I was feeling and I was looking for her to pick me up. Basically attacks me for my feelings and literally couldn't handle any of my minor emotions that I confessed to her for the first time ever. I consider our friendship over at this point since I can't talk to her about any of my feelings. Month 7. She tells me she's going off her bipolar medications. I ask her if she's okay. She won't talk to me about it. She gets angry and defensive when I insinuate she isn't okay and that I don't believe her. A few weeks later, she sends me a text saying she doesn't want someone who causes drama and negative influences in her life. I never answer. The end.